This is going to serve as the instructions for installing the 7443 Beacon Plus converter kit for Toyota corner marker housings, enabling you to install a larger style 7443 bulb, preferably an LED, into a Toyota corner marker housing, allowing you to keep marker turn, as well as running a higher power and more option bulb set like some of the LEDs that we have over here. This instructional video will come in a few parts. This first part will cover tools and general installation, so everybody should hang out for this part of the video. And then down below, I'm going to set chapters so you can scroll down to your specific model so you can see exactly the specifics with the adapter made for your model. This video will cover the 89 to 91 4Runner and pickup, the latest facelift, first gen Tacoma, the second facelift, third gen Tacoma, or first gen Tacoma, and the third gen 4Runner, all years from 96 to 2002. Tools, what are you going to need? You need a drill. You need preferably a large step bit. This one goes up to 1¼ inches. It makes it easiest. If you don't have that option, the size you need is 22 millimeters or 7/8 of an inch, and that is the largest size on this guy here. The reason you would be more preferable to have a larger step bit is that it doesn't go into the housing as far and risk scratching up the plastic. One thing I do recommend is taking some electrical tape and taping up the tip of this guy so it doesn't scratch the housing. You'll see that when we get to each installation. Other tools you will want. This is a deburring tool. This one is good for just removing a little bit of plastic burr after you've drilled, not overly necessary. Or a small half-round file like this one is also an excellent choice. If you don't have a drill, one thing I will recommend is if you don't have access to step bits, I highly recommend you either buy some on Amazon. You're only going to use them in plastic, so they don't have to be super expensive. The other thing you can do is file out the housing completely, which will take a lot of time, but it will probably produce the best result. The third option, and I don't have it shown here, is you could use a rotary tool like a Dremel or a air die grinder with a small flap disc or grinding stone to enlarge the hole to the size that we need. That is the next best option in my opinion, just a little bit harder to control and a little less slick. The thing I would not use is a twin flute bit of that size because it will tend to grab the plastic and go into the lens. You'll have a bad day if that's the case, if you want to use that tool. Next thing to cover will be glue. The gold standard is going to be a 2-part epoxy. Do not use super glue. This will not last. It will crack from vibration and heat cycling. Take it off the table, don't even look at it. You need to use something that either chemically welds or sets, is a thermoset. I have 5-minute epoxy, and that's fine if you're comfortable working with something at that speed. If this is partially hardened, you may end up in a situation where you don't have a perfect bond. I actually like the long set epoxy better. It is stronger when it's fully cured, but 5 minutes more convenient for something like this where you want to get it back in the truck same day. The other option is you use ABS cement. Now, particularly with the aftermarkets and some of the older vehicles, they actually have ABS housings. And these are also ABS plastic, so you can chemically weld with a solvent. In my case, I make mine out of acetone and some 3D printing filaments to my desired thickness. You can pick it up from the hardware store in the plumbing aisle, the black pipe cement that's typically yellow from Home Depot, Rona, Lowe's, whatever you've got close by. That can also function quite well. Just a note that it sets very quickly, but it will be the strongest bond that you can get. For these guys, I do recommend roughing the surface up with a bit of sandpaper. If you're using ABS cement, you can just slap that thing together and it will be permanently glued. In fact, it wouldn't even be glued, it would be welded. Other little things you may want to have, a set of brushes, cheap brushes from the dollar store, or Q-tips works really well for spreading the glue around. For the two-part epoxy, I like to have a tiny piece of scrap cardboard just to mix on. I'm going to take a second to address the differences between the factory and aftermarket marker housings. Everything is modeled from the factory housings. Toyota will be the most consistent. Their hole is centered and the bulb holder will always fit the best in a factory housing. You can see because this is 3D scanned, it fits tightly. In fact, almost snaps on. So when you go to glue this guy on, it's going to give you the absolute best fit. Unfortunately, clean factory housings are quite expensive, so it's common for people to replace them with aftermarkets. Now, I've actually found that some aftermarkets do not have the same amount of tolerance on the back as the factory, and I'm going to show you that right now. This guy here is, well, it looks fine from the front. This is an Eagle Eyes brand, and you can buy these on Amazon. It will say made in Taiwan on them. And while they look fairly similar in the shape of the bulb holder, sadly, the bulb holder does not snap into place. With some effort, you might be able to glue that on, but right now I'm going to say that Eagle Eyes is a non-compatible housing. If you do end up having an Eagle Eyes housing and you do order the standard ones and you end up receiving them because we somehow miscommunicate, get back in touch with me and I'll make sure that I get something for you that fits right the first time. Nothing more frustrating than getting something that doesn't work if you're excited about it. Now this one is a depot, and these are the Kappa certified, bought from aftermarket auto body supply stores. These ones sometimes come unbranded online. You can see from the front, they actually say depot in the housing, much like the Toyota does. They have raised lettering on them. These in general will fit. They're not quite as good, but the bulb holder will still snap into place. There'll be a bit of a gap that fills with glue, but it, for the most part, sits down over the opening as it should. And you can even see that they don't even make the opening in the exact same tolerances. It's not even centered. But generally, Depot is good. I don't mind them as an aftermarket brand. You're going to find most of the ones that have the clear reflectors are made by Depot. So these will work and they will fit. If there's ever an issue with fitment, like if it doesn't snap in, wants to fall off, just get in touch with me before you start gluing stuff together. It's a lot easier for me to help you before everything starts going sideways. If it's already glued on, you've kind of crossed a bridge where I can no longer really do anything for you, save for get you another set for another set of markers. From here, we're going to go into the individual installations of each of these versions, where I'm actually going to drill out and glue on the housing for you to see. The steps are going to be fairly similar the entire way along. We're going to drill out to the 22 millimeters. We're going to deburr with a deburring tool or a file. We'll blow out the chips out of the housing, and then we will prep and glue on our adapter by roughing up the surface with some sandpaper and then mixing our cement and then thereby gluing to the housing. Feel free to skip down through the chapters just below and you will be able to find the one for these 4 different versions. I'm going to quickly cover bulb selection for those of you who have purchased a kit that doesn't include bulbs. The maximum length I've designed this kit to handle is approximately 52 millimeters or 2 inches. And that's the total length of your 7443 bulb. If you were under that, this is the basic switchback that I sell with the kit. You will have no problem fitting the bulb inside the housing. They're all designed around this length. And the reason being is that we don't want the bulb to be contacting the acrylic lens. These do tend to get warm. This switchback in particular I like a lot because it's a lightweight and it doesn't really get higher than 40 C on normal operations, so it's not going to melt or harm or discolor anything while it's in use. This Oxito bulb from Amazon, a little heavier, definitely brighter, and a fairly high quality representation. Both of these bulbs click into the sockets nicely, so it's definitely something you want to pay attention to. A lot of these aftermarket bulbs don't fit in the sockets at all, and they will just fall out. This one being one of them. It doesn't. Bulbs like this guy, a very bright bulb, but it's too long. If you start seeing fans on the end of them like this one, it's probably going to be too bright. This is also, or too, it will run too hot and be too long. This is also an Oxito brand. I run these in my Tundra. They're quite good, but you just want to watch. This will not fit in the end. This is also a built-in resistor bulb, meaning that you don't have to run a relay to prevent hyperflash. Now, this is really convenient and seems like a good idea, but it means that this bulb runs significantly hotter. In fact, almost as hot, if not hotter, than the halogens you are replacing. This puts the housing at risk of softening, so just pay attention to the size and power that you were purchasing. Don't just go for the highest brightness because you may regret it. And they may also burn out a bit faster. I did find that with this bulb is that it does burn out fairly quickly. Bulbs of this size are good. This one unfortunately had too much of an issue with being able to run as a marker and flash for a few electrical reasons. But again, this compact size is just about perfect for any of these applications. The stock halogen bulb will hit about 75 C in the open air, which is, I don't know, probably around 185 Fahrenheit. The materials that we are working with, the lens that is made out of acrylic, as well as the ABS backings of it, all start to soften around 100 degrees Celsius. So on a hot day in a confined space, if this is running, you may find that you overheat the plastic housing, and it's not something I recommend. Also, because I design for the depth of these bulbs, to prevent hitting the lens, I have to move them back, and you can see that the glass bulb doesn't fit nearly as nicely as this one. The last note I want to make is about LED flashers. Highly recommend picking up an LED flasher. They're a couple of bucks and they swap out in minutes from the back of your fuse panel. These ones I ordered in, I got the wrong part number. You want something called a CF14, so CF14, not 13, 14, or a Novita EP35 flasher relay, and allows you to run any load of relay that, or any load of light you wish, and this will just flash at a steady rate. Highly recommended. You can pick these up at your local parts store. I will be selling them soon enough. I'm just waiting for a shipment of them to come in. Just a quick look at the sockets that you're going to be installing. When you go to install the socket or install the bulb into the socket, there's a tab here you need to kind of push over and depress as you install. If you don't and just try and ram it in, you might end up just pushing the black pin out. I found it a few times on some of the bulbs. If you push too hard, you can end up pushing the pin out. This is fairly easy to pull back. This is basically a Toyota design. It's just a replica of it. And you can pull these rubber pieces can pull back and you can see the pins on the inside. Sometimes you just have to re-engage the pin. This is just a bit of troubleshooting. If you find that your bulb isn't fitting in the socket too nicely, it should click in pretty firmly. Not super strong, but firm enough. If you do have bulb fitment issues with your aftermarket bulbs that you select, There's pins here that help retain the bulb, and you can see I'm kind of prying that one over right now. You can just push them ever so slightly tighter, and that'll help grip the bulb a little bit better. I found through the 5 or 10 different bulbs that I've tested that not all of them fit like the other. Some of them don't have the best dimensions, or they don't have the best tolerances, so sometimes they don't fit in the sockets. Even in the factory sockets, they still don't fit all that well. So high quality is always better as far as the base of the bulb and how they fit. Wiring wise, you're going to see 3 wires on the back of these sockets. The black wire is your ground. The blue wire is your turn signal or high power. The red wire here is your marker. And just to show you on the switchback, it illuminates white until we connect the blue, and then it goes to red, and it goes back to white. The blue wire will be the power wire, or the hot wire that you'll pull up from your turn signal in your bumper. You don't need to supply ground from both the marker lamp and the bumper, but you can run your turn signal and turn signal ground up from your bumper to these 2 wires, and then use this one, and you could even just tap or splice into your marker socket that's just behind the corner marker. All right, first up is the 96 to 2002 4Runner. This is the most popular kit by far. So this one will be the one that we do first. This is the factory housing. And I will note that this housing is polypropylene. You can see PPT20. This means you have to use the epoxy on this. You cannot use ABS cement if you see PPT20. This means it's made out of polypropylene with 20% fiber added. So it's pretty tough. Toyota is obviously pretty good for making sure their stuff is tough. If you were not using a step bit, you can see there is a groove down here, kind of where it turns to a flat area. If you were using a Dremel or something like that, this is what you are filing out to. So you can just remove everything on the flat out to that edge. The kit itself is tapered to match the tapers here, and that's where it will sit. It doesn't need to necessarily sit up against that surface, so you can remove it completely. If not, we're going to get right to it. I'm actually going to switch to my thinner bit here because the recess there I'm starting to touch. This, just taping up the nose of your step bit. Last thing you want to do is have your bulb nearby, so you can see that you've actually gotten it in far enough to be able to install your bulb. I'm just going slow here till I get through, all the way through. And you can see I've removed most of that. I am more than enough to get my bulb all the way in on a test, including part of the socket. So we're more than good. I won't show you blowing the chips out, but you can see that they do collect down there. Easiest way to do it is with a blowgun, and you blow into that hole and you shake and try and get that out. I did mention removing the lens earlier. You could remove the lens to paint and do this all at the same time. And then you don't have to worry about anything filling up in the inside there. All right, and then the last thing I suggest you do, this is some 220 grit sandpaper. I'm just gonna rough up the inside. And this is clumsy, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just to get a little bit of a better bond. You wanna mix enough of this to allow it to squeeze out from the sides when gluing it on, but not so much that you are putting glue down into the housing unnecessarily. Now on the housing here, I recommend you apply it directly to the taper and to the joint here, and then on the lamp all the way around the inside and the outside. Maybe a cotton swab wasn't the best idea, but it's something you guys will probably have that you can use. And you need to go all the way around, making sure that there is more than enough glue to squeeze out. And then the last thing you're going to want to inspect with the other side of your Q-tip is that you see there's a bit of glue that's gotten in on the bottom. Just wipe that up so it doesn't harden and create an obstruction or a catch point for your bulb, which is going to be very frustrating. Now, if you're concerned about the amount of glue you've got in here, see there's a little bit of squish there, but not so much down there. You can run a bead of silicone around this afterwards just to keep the water out. No sense in wondering whether or not this is completely glued on. If you've applied enough cement, you won't have an issue at all with this. Let this cure for the full time that it says on the bottle, whatever you've used, before you start to install the socket. The socket is tight. The O-ring is tight to seal, so it will twist it off if you don't let this cure fully. This guy for the JB Wheel, it might say 5 minutes, but it cures in an hour. Install our bulb, and it'll only go in one orientation and lock into place. And you can then double check that your housing has enough room for the bulb you've selected. Good luck. A 1-04 Tacoma is a little bit unique in that every single housing I've tested has worked with the same adapter without any modifications or restrictions. So if you have this truck, you shouldn't have much of an issue installing the kit. It is, I think, the easiest one to do. You get both adapters. There's a left and a right. These are actually an Eagle Eyes housing, Eagle Eyes brand. And they seemed to fit just fine, which surprised me because every other Eagle Eyes I've tried has been problematic. These ones don't fit as tight as the OE or Depots, but that's fine. There's going to be a nice amount of glue in there holding this guy on. So if you do end up buying these, I bought them on Amazon from car parts or something like that. You can use these housings if you want to pick up just a cheap spare set to try this mod with. Now, first thing to do is we have to drill out this hole to 22 millimeters or 7/8 of an inch, and you can just see that outside line is pretty much where we want to go for the most part. You can do this with a Dremel and a sanding disc or bit that you can get in here and kind of clear it out. I don't recommend using like a carbide or something. It's too aggressive for plastic. Just don't use a double fluted standard bit. Use one of these really big step bits that go to about 1.25 inches because they don't hit the lens. And I also tape up the end to prevent any sort of scratches or damage to the lens should you go a little bit too far. Just be careful you're not damaging up the area while drilling. That's about as far as this bit can go before I start chewing into the rest of the housing that I don't want to. I can take a file from here, and a good thing to do is to take the bulb you're about to install and ensure that it goes in all the way. This one does not, so we need to go a little bit farther. And I'm actually going to switch to this guy that's a little bit longer. It's still a 7/8 bit, but this one you have to be more careful with that you don't hit the lens. And when I drill with this guy, I'm actually going to do it blind in a way, so I'm making sure I'm not doing any damage to my brand new housing. You see it's quite close there. And then blow out any of the debris. You can use an air gun through, take this guy off, and you can blow in there with an air gun and let the debris flow out with the airflow. It's probably the fastest way. There's two methods we're going to do this. You can look at one of the other ones if you want to see me do this with epoxy, but this one actually has an ABS housing that you can see written right there, ABS. And since we're using an ABS part, I'm actually going to bond this one on with an ABS cement. It is much more aggressive, but it will ensure that this guy never, ever, ever comes off. It'll break around here. You guys can't smell it over here, but this is straight acetone and ABS filament, and it is some sloppy, nasty, delicious glue. And for when you glue these ones, I do recommend that you go to the outside of the housing here, because you want to squish the glue out as much as you possibly can. Do not get it inside the housing. You will be very disappointed with it getting into your nice lens. ABS glue, you have to move a bit quicker because it is going to start to melt the plastic and dry. This is definitely a higher level of difficulty for anybody installing this. Okay. And now we're going to squeeze this one on as well as we can. You can see there's a little bit that's pushed inside. Keep a Q-tip and just wipe that. Don't have to remove or clean the glue off, just make it flat so it does not interfere with your bulb. One thing I will mention is do not get glue on the socket area. Do not let it harden. If you do, clean it off or flatten it off right away. You don't want to inadvertently have that happen and then not be able to install your socket after you've just glued this to your housing. Sanding it's not going to be the most fun, but if that does happen to you, that's probably going to be all you're left with to fix it. So this one's done. We're going to let this ABS cement set up. This one's a little bit more unique than standard because the bulb socket hole points almost immediately at the lens. So there's very little room actually inside this housing. Therefore, we have a longer housing to be able to allow us to install a longer bulb. Remember that 2-inch maximum. If you watch the Forerunner portion, the steps are exactly the same. We're going to drill out to the edge of this flange. I'll show you on this depot. We're going to drill out right to the edge of this flange. We're going to remove all the material. Do this with your Dremel, or you do this with a step bit. Tape up the nose of your step bit, especially on this light, because it's very easy to hit the lens because the lens is very close. This step bit is almost a little too long. This is where a fatter step bit might be in handy. Like I said, buy a set on Amazon with multiple sizes. This one's 1.25 inches, so it's quite a rapid step up. We only need to remove enough material to allow the bulb and socket to pass in. That's all we need to do, right? There is a minor compatibility issue with depot lights for the 98 to 2000 Tacoma. This one is actually a little bit offset. It's not very good. It isn't as clean of a casting as the OE. I have made a second set that's marked by this X and will in fact fit just the same, but you need to let me know if you have these depot housings. So we'll drill this out right now. In fact, you can kind of see that I'm gonna go one step at a time. Take whatever bulb you're using and you can double check. This one catches right there, so I need to go to one more size. Particularly the 98 to 2000 Tacoma, Dremel might be a better tool for in here. But you can see there's some debris. You can see the bulb fits in here freely, but it does contact the lens if we go down too far. What I recommend is about a dime size application of your glue per type. So this is probably, if you laid this out flat, it'd be a dime each. This is a polypropylene housing, PP T20, so we need to use epoxy. If this was ABS, we can use ABS glue. which is actually probably going to be stronger. The last step here is to just rough this up. I've got some P220 grit sandpaper. Definitely a good idea to just give a little bit of roughness to the area you are about to glue to. Blow the housing out, getting all the debris out with a bit of air. You can blow air into this port and let it eject out of here. The alternate is if you're worried about damaging the lens on these, this one is butyl sealed. You can warm these up in the oven and pull the lens off. There's some tabs here you just have to release. Not rocket science if you're familiar with retrofitting headlights. That way you can black the outs inside out if you want while you do this, and then you don't have to worry about scratching the lenses or anything while you're doing drilling and gluing. Once you've sanded this up, I give it a wipe with some isopropyl alcohol just to make sure there is no dirt, grease, or oil or anything from your fingers on there that's going to prevent the bond from forming. I would be very sure to apply this in a wet coat, but you don't want to allow any glue to fall down inside the housing, so I keep some Q-tips nearby to just wipe it up at the end. Now I'm using a pick, Q-tip, brush, whatever you want, but apply it to the inside taper as best you can. You do want to see some glue squish out so it forms a seal around the outside. You can apply some silicone at the very end. Just watch that you're not getting glue down into the housing again. You can just apply a bit of glue in here for good measure. If you get any cement down into the bulb bore area, wipe that out immediately. Even if it's just a thin coat left in there, you're not going to hurt anything. But don't let it have any dimension, otherwise it'll interfere with your bulb installation. So you can see both sides are quite wet with glue. I'm using 5 minutes, so I have to be fairly quick about this. And push down and form the seal, and you can see it's squeezing out all the way around. That means I've used enough glue. And then lastly, if I can show this, there's no glue squeezing out inside the housing. If that is the case, you do get a bit of glue, quickly grab a Q-tip or some other implement and wipe the inside. Even if you just smear it around flat, just don't let it get tall or run down onto your lens. Okay, and now you just wait the set time. On this glue, it says 5 minutes, but the cure time is an hour. Do not install your bulbs and bulb holders until the entire hour has passed. You really want to make sure that you allow this glue to set or cure fully before you are sticking the bulb in. You don't want to twist all of your work off with a glue you don't want to undo all of your hard work by twisting this thing off when it's half cured. Here are the install instructions for the 7443 kit for the 89 to 92 Forerunner and pickup. The installation is going to be the exact same between the early model and the facelift model. Another special note with these, because they are side install and the depth of the lens is very shallow on these. So to be able to fit a maximum 50mm bulb, the neck of this adapter is a fair bit longer. While this comes to the same sort of area as the connector, the bulkiness of it does require you to trim the edge of the step down on your fender where the bolts go to allow this to slip into place. But from what I can tell, you may have to trim that portion and a little bit of the rad support. It won't be much, just about the size of the bulb holder. If you can get this in without the bulb in it, you might be able to just install that from the back. First note I want to make is compatibility issues. I haven't had a chance to check a depot housing yet, but the Toyota housings are what I've modeled these off of, so you need to use an OE Toyota housing to complete this mod. There's a chance depot will fit. I'm still trying to track a set down, but right now this is going to be your best chance for success. This guy here is an Eagle Eyes, and it is one that actually does not fit at all. You can see Eagle Eyes made in Taiwan. This is sold by Car Parts on Amazon. They start with a KS part number. You can see that there. And there is almost no chance of this working out. The fit is all wrong. And the bulb holder is in a very offset location. Eagle Eyes doesn't seem to pay much attention to this area as long as the stock bulb fits. If you do have a set of Eagle Eyes, unfortunately, you're probably going to have to find a different set of housings to make this mod work with your truck. Looking at the back of the OEM Toyota housing, there is a left and a right socket, and they will install directly over the original hole. And these are 3D scanned and modeled to fit in the exact same profile. You do have the advantage of this housing being ABS, so if you want to use ABS cement to weld to the back of this, I do recommend it if you are able, but you need to be able to scratch all the way through this chrome coating to get to the actual plastic. If you just go right to this chrome, you're not going to bond to anything, and your part will just fall off later. To install, you need to use a big step bit. This one is 1.25 inches. I do recommend you tape up the end of this to be able to drill this out to size. It doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as you can fit the tip of the socket inside, you'll be more than good enough to get any bulb in that you wish. After you do that, make sure you blow all of the debris out of the housing. The easiest way to do that is to just put air through one of the vents and give it a shake upside down. You can heat them up in the oven and pull the lens off if you want to black out the inside or clean the inside of these and kind of restore them a little bit. You can do that. Just due to age, I would say make sure you put some new butyl in the inside if you're going to go through with that mod. It makes drilling this out a lot nicer, but is not at all necessary. You can blow this out as long as you put a bit of tape on the end of this thing and make sure you don't hit your lens. You'll be all right. I definitely recommend using some sandpaper. Rough this area up as much as you can. I'm actually using a file here to get down to some of the base plastic. Again, if you are using ABS cement on this housing, you do need to remove the coating. You may want to actually use something like a wire wheel. If you can't remove all of the chrome, I've scratched mine up fairly good. Clean the whole thing off with isopropyl alcohol to get rid of the dirt and any of the grease. Now we're going to mix some epoxy. For this guy, we're probably going to want to have good nickel sized of both. And what I suggest you do is you can use a brush, or you can use kind of the toothpick method that I've got going on here, but we want to cover the entire area that is going to be covered by the adapter. Try not to let any of this glue go in or squeeze into the opening, but you're going to want to apply it all the way around the tapered edge. We've got it applied nicely to both pieces now, and we are going to press it into place and hold it, and you'll see some glue squish in here. I definitely recommend just smoothing it out. Don't let it run in. Don't let it become a catch for your bulb when you go to pull it in and out, because that's going to be frustrating. But there is a nice clean bead all the way around this housing. There's no glue down inside, and there's definitely no glue on the bulb interface. And now we just wait the allotted amount of time. The other thing for this guy is it's a lot harder to get it. Is just make sure that you don't have this kind of like lifted up push it down as flat as you can get it onto the bulb contact surface down in there. And now we're going to wait the full cure time.